The question you always have is, what are businesses doing? And right now, it doesn't look like they did very well. After a 5.7% gain in spending in the fourth quarter, it dropped 2.1%. So business just stopped dead in its tracks.
It's hard to prevent the American people from creating wealth. It's an achievement to make the economy grow this slow. 44% of the jobs created since the recession ended 5 years ago this coming June are either in food services, retailing, or other low-wage entry jobs. This is a calamity, and it's happening when we're in this revolution of energy independence and collapsing energy prices. It's astonishing, perverse achievement.
All right, those were the words from Bloomberg economic editor Mike McKee and Washington Post columnist George Will after the Commerce Department revealed that the U.S. economy slowed to a dismal 0.1% growth between January and March. So what's to blame for this bad number? Well, rushing to the defense of the president, as usual, Jay Carney did what he does best, and he spins the news and actually said that Obamacare is the reason for any growth at all. Oh, really? What's this?
The fact of the matter is, and the GDP report makes it clear, that it was consumer spending on health care that helped drive economic growth in the first quarter.
All right, so that was yesterday, but the disappointing economic news did not end there, because earlier today, the Labor Department reported that weekly jobless claims rose unexpectedly, it's always unexpectedly, by 14,000 to a seasonally adjusted 344,000, which is pretty unbelievable. Here with analysis, author, columnist, Dr. Charles Krauthammer, sir, is back. How are you?
I'm great. Pleasure to be with you.
You know, first let's get to the Carney aspect of this, because you know, whatever the lie, whatever the spin is, doesn't matter how far over the top, he goes with it. Does he get to stay after now the smoking gun, as you called it, with Benghazi?
Oh, he'll stay, but I mean, I'm enjoying the comedy, because let's take what he said at face value. Let's say it's true that that's the reason we got any growth at all, is Obamacare. Well, unless you can show me that Americans are demonstrably healthier today than they were 1 quarter ago, what he's saying is for the same health care, we have to spend more. So the main complaint about Obamacare is American medicine is the most expensive in the world without a necessarily significant difference in outcome. Well, what he's telling us, admitting to us unwittingly, is that Obamacare has just made that fact worse.
Well, here's one point that the New York Post put out today. If the Commerce Department didn't reduce its inflation rate that they used to make a GDP calculation from 1.6 to 1.3%, well, that means we would have had a contracted quarter, which means that makes me question if they fix the numbers here.
Well, look, the numbers are so bad that you don't have to fix them. This is a flat line. If you're a doctor and you're standing by your patient at the hospital and that's on the heart monitor, you reach for the paddles and you plug it in. Now, you know, this administration has heralded all of these jump starts, the great stimulus of '09, the biggest spending bill in galactic history, and then there was a second stimulus. And remember, we have a monetary stimulus going on as we speak. Year after year, the Fed has been pumping $1 trillion into the economy, and still we flatline. And, you know, people look for all these esoteric explanations. Right now, the great fashion on the left, there's a book by a Frenchman blaming it on something intrinsic in capitalism. Well, I don't know about you, but I lived in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. There is nothing intrinsic in capitalism about flatline growth and inequality. What we have is a very simple proposition. An administration that believes in higher taxation and heavy intrusive regulation. That is your explanation. That's the start and the finish. You take away the burdens and you take away the uncertainties, and the American economy will grow, and that's what it's trying to do despite the ministrations of this administration.
And the debt. And back in 2005, the Financial Times pointed out that the International Comparison Program thought that China's economy was less than half the size of the U.S. This has all happened. They were about to overtake us. This has all happened in 9 short years that this is going to happen. What does that tell us?
It tells us that 1871 was a pretty bad year. But look, you know, it was inevitable. China's got 4 times our population. the way that they jumped ahead of us, or are going to jump ahead of us today, or this year instead of in half a decade, is because of a change in the calculation by the IMF. So they're using a different kind of measure. The fact is that inevitably, if you have a billion, 1.2 billion people, they're going to have an economy that will outpace us in the gross output. But that's not news. What's news is that ours simply has stopped growing. That's what's unusual. It's not the growth of China. And the stoppage of the growth after, half a century post-World War II. Look, in every recovery since 1960, it's half a century, the average growth has been over 4%. With Obama, it's half of that. And again, no mystery. And I think that the country has a sense that all of these, pretenses, excuses, you go the weather in the first quarter, of course, everything ultimately is George Bush. And what isn't Bush is global warming, I suppose. Everybody understands that in the end, this is a very heavily intrusive government. And they know the American economy has a genius for expansion and growth.
Wow.
Let it go, particularly in energy.
I agree. I'm on the exact same page with energy. Charles, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure.